everyone. I'm Gary Null. This is the Empowerment Hour. I wanted you to hear about the real strength and weaknesses of the Green New Deal and how the Democrats have become the new war party, the new terrorist party, the new fascistic party. It's hard to imagine, but my God, today they're similar to the Democrats that created the Ku Klux Klan. They're just filled with rage, and they're flailing away to maintain their power. And they don't know how to communicate with young people. The old guard is entrenched. So not only on today's show am I having Ajamu Baraka, and he has been a political and grassroots activist and defender of human rights, both at home and abroad, for 40 years. He was Jill Stein's vice presidential running mate for the Green Party during the 2016 election and was the founding executive director of the Human Rights Network, the first American organization committed to applying international human rights standards in the United States. He'll be my guest, and we're going to talk about how what they, the Green Party, and its members created, the Democrats have usurped it. And why didn't they give credit to these people? Why didn't they invite him and others in the Green Party who have real integrity in to discuss this and to show its strengths? Anyhow, we're going to do that today. We're going now to my guest who's on Skype standing by, and I gave you his introduction earlier, Ajamu Baraka, and we're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the Green New Deal and how the Democrats have become the new war party, which is surprising because most people assume and have taken it that the Democratic Party that began to evolve away from the old racist party, the founders of the Ku Klux Klan, into a more progressive party, have continued to become more progressive. And many of us who used to be, real believers in the Democratic Party and supported it, mainly because we were motivated by Franklin Delano Roosevelt and what he did. And he was a very wealthy man, but he also gave us some of the best programs, social programs in American history. And so let's go over and speak with my guest now. And he's received a lot of awards. He won notable awards for his human rights efforts, including Abolitionist of the Year from the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. And he is currently an editor and columnist for the Black Agenda Report, which appears on with Nellie Bailey and all the other, Bruce Dixon, here on the Progressive River Network on every Monday preceding my show. And he is also an associate at the Institute of Policy Studies in Washington, D.C. Nice to have you with us today.
It is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Most people do not realize that the Green New Deal that the younger Democrats are pushing for as earlier precedents, a Yale University survey found that 81% of Americans, including 64% of Republicans, support the idea. Obama signed a prototype of a green bill in 2009 that was tied into his $800 billion American Recovery and Reinvestment Act stimulus to save the economy from depression. His law was supposed to move towards renewable, clean energies. It hasn't done much. Last year, the U.S. only got 17% of its electricity from renewable sources, and over 7% of that was from hydropower, which has its own environmental shortcomings because we are speaking of dams. However, it was the Green Party back in 2006 that first formulated what was called then the Green New Deal Task Force proposal. In fact, it has been central to Jill Stein's and your platform during the 2016 presidential campaign. Yet nobody in the media, at least no one I'm aware of, nor the Democratic Party is giving acknowledgement to the Green Party for being way ahead of the curve on environmental issues to address climate change. In fact, more credit is given to the New York Times hack Thomas Friedman than to the Greens for its origination. That is just shocking, based upon a column he wrote a year after the Greens developed it. So I'd like you to speak about the Green Party's Green New Deal proposal, how much of it was hijacked by the new wave of left and of center Democrats, and what are its strengths and deficiencies. The forum is yours.
Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate the your question, and in particular, sharing with your audience some of the history of the evolution of this ideal and the Green Party platform. You're absolutely right. It is, you know, the how this ideal has been responded to by the mainstream media has really been incredible. We remember during the campaign that when Jill had a sit down with the editorial board of the Washington Post, they came out with their report of that conversation, and they criticized Jill and criticized our platform as being unrealistic and not having a chance of any kind of advancement toward real legislation. They basically just completely rejected it. But now, with the articulation of the Green New Deal ideal from some of these young Democrats, the Washington Post, New York Times, and most of the other mainstream media outlets have characterized it as absolutely brilliant. So it's really incredible, and I think it's hard to really completely understand the difference in the responses. Perhaps maybe because some of us see that what Ocasio Cortez is pushing is very different from what we were advocating. The first thing is that basically what she is pushing, and the other young Democrats, is a Green New Deal ideal. They part of the plan is for them to, in fact, have uh, the Congress to come up with a committee that will then develop a plan. She has, in her articulations, used some buzzwords that suggest that the plan that they will come up with would not deviate very significantly from the sort of neoliberal logic that we see in place today. When you talk about having a plan where there's labor flexibility and encouraging entrepreneurship, it suggests that it will be a plan very different from the Green Party. The Green Party said basically that we had to move to an economy that was based on 100% renewable energy. And we had to do that fairly quickly. And I think that the science has supported that. But we recognize that to do that, it was going to take a political struggle. It was going to take a political struggle because we had to structurally transform how the economy operated. We had to move away from an economy that was dependent on these obsessive and obscene expenditures toward the military, military being one of the greatest emitters of carbon. We had to put some real constraints on the energy companies that had no objective interest in moving to an economy that's dependent on renewable energy. We had to recognize that we had to finance this through unconventional means. That we couldn't depend on the Federal Reserve, as the Ocasio version articulates, that the Federal Reserve, controlled by private banks, would be the main funder of this transformation, along with the private sector. We recognized that we had to have a different approach, which means public funding. We had to address the issue of the Federal Reserve by nationalizing the Federal Reserve. We had to have public banks that would help with this transition. And we had to have a just transition, understanding that the thousands of jobs that are now dependent on these dirty industries are represented by real live human beings. And that in a shift to a renewable energy economy, we had to have processes in place in which people would be able to retain their jobs and make a smooth transition. So there are a number of things that are very different from what is being articulated by Ocasio Cortez and the Democrats, and what we were trying to push and still trying to push today within the Green Party.
I appreciate that overview. Thank you. What is your assessment of this new wave of Democrats, such as Cortez and others, and do you feel that they will have much of an impact getting their agenda recognized by the old rank and file corporate Democrats and the media supporters the old rank and file has? The rank and file controls, as you know, most of the liberal media in the United States, and that now rule over the House. So the opinion leaders they control, the opinion policymakers they control. So what impact will they have?
Well, one of the things that we think is important is that they have at least been able to introduce the language and the concept or the need for us to really begin to seriously address the issue, the ecological crisis that we are facing as a collective humanity. We think it's important that there are more people in Congress now who are willing to at least consider more aggressive measures toward addressing these issues and moving in a direction in which more radical, if you will, measures might be embraced. So in terms of shifting the discourse, it's been very important. The problem will be, of course, in the details. And because of that, we see that there's been pushback from the leadership of the Democratic Party against these young people, because they understand that the implications of a real move toward addressing these issues and calling for a restructuring of the economy threatens economic interests that the Democratic Party is now still dependent on. So we believe there's going to be some shift in the discourse, which has already happened. But we believe that the whole idea will probably get bottled up in Congress, in committees, and not really go further than what it is today, unless there's a reaction from the public, a more aggressive set of demands coming from the public to really push these ideals forward.
I would like to see something that we have never seen, at least not in my lifetime. I would like to see the young, more idealistic Democrats and conservatives who are young and idealistic. I'm sure that they will find one. And I would like to see them embrace the philosophies that have woodwork, but are from more experience, the wise men and women of the past. I don't like the idea of these generational disconnects. I believe that if they were to invite you because they have idealism, they have energy, and now they have position, but they do not have this scholarship, they do not have the in-depth knowledge. Every time I hear these people talk, they're talking without knowing what they're talking about. They have one large talking point and they stick to it, but get into the details and they're lost. Where you and others, Glenn Ford, the people who have very deep knowledge of social issues and social change and understanding politics, if you were side by side with them, if they brought you into committee hearings, brought you before the press when they're talking, I think that you would be able to make the more persuasive argument, and then they could use your argument to learn from, and they could then take it into the committees to start formulate programs that might make a difference. And also, I would like to see you and Jill and the others do short little informational pieces about the environment, hundreds of them, and throw them out there on YouTube so that we educate the public about how them becoming involved or not becoming aware or involved in the environment will directly impact them, either positively or negatively. And when people see something that impacts them, they'll make a difference. If they saw where meat came from and then saw the slaughter process so they could get something on their table without realizing where it came from, I believe that we could change some minds and help the environment by going towards a lower carbon footprint, methane footprint with veganism and plant-based diets. That's my own personal prejudice. But I see there should not be just these people who do not have any depth on these issues at all, but do have personalities, charisma, and they have the power of the media to get attention. So why not bring in the wise men and women to help back up their messages? Your thoughts?
You know, Gary, those are very important and good ideals. I think that the the challenge will be that the powers that be, that still will control the committees in Congress, are not really serious about really addressing the plan being pushed by these young Democrats. They prefer to use the slogans to sheepdog, if you will, young progressives and others into the Democrat Party without any real commitment to seriously addressing and developing something that could, in fact, move us forward in a progressive direction. So they would never really seriously bring people like myself and others who are even more grounded in this than I am to Congress to provide hearings, because I don't really believe they are prepared to take this seriously. This, Gary, is going to need a push from the bottom up, from the people themselves. It has to take, people have to embrace this and really begin to push this and push their representatives to embrace these ideals. Not only in terms of the Green New Deal as people understand it, but that other element that you talked about when you introduced me, and that is the connecting issue of militarism. These issues have to be seriously and aggressively pushed by the public to make these representatives understand that we can no longer afford politics as usual, and that if we're going to have a Green New Deal, if we're going to have the ability to address the ecological crisis that we are facing, we're going to have a planet that's savable, then basically we've got to not only address the issue of ecology, but also address the issue of the never-ending wars that we seem to be caught up in. So, this is going to take a popular movement. And the good thing, again, about this movement is that at least people are talking about this now in a more serious way. There's been some degree of exposure. Again, though, I don't know how long it's going to last, but I can tell you this. Those of us who are in the Green Party, we are committed to pushing the dialogue forward for as long as we can until we are once again marginalized.
Well, we're going to be there to give voice to your support. I supported Jill Stein and Rocky Anderson and Ralph Nader. And I do not hold up much hope for this, the way this New Deal is being promoted as far as how it's going to be received, because the military defense contractors and the military industrial complex is extremely powerful. They control Nancy Pelosi. They control Chuck Schumer. They have deep military adventurism and continuing the war hawk stance of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And so you need new voices. And also, let us just remind this audience, the American media would like you to believe that the Green Party is insignificant. It's a tiny little local party. It is not. It is a worldwide party. In fact, the European countries hold the Green parties and the Greens' philosophy very high. Germany, they have actually gained parliamentary seats. And we look at all of the climate change threats we are facing. This is a global crisis, and in effect, the Green Party is the only real political entity that reaches beyond the U.S. borders. And I commend you for what you're doing, and we will always provide you with a forum here on the Progressive Radio Network to spread that message. So I want to thank you for being out there.
I appreciate that, Gary.
You will hear more from my guest and more from the Greens, the people that actually originated this, and we will see a lot of articles. We've published 7 major environmental articles. They're up on PRN.fm. And if you would like to reach out to our guest today or the Green Party, let me spell his email address. It's AJAMUBARAKA.com. So we thank you, Ajamu Baraka, for being on, and all the best to the Green Party and all of its members.